half flush out of it. So he had all of like the pin ones, and then he had some like winds and dragons. So it was a really cool hand. So I enjoyed seeing it. Oh, Dark, you said, oh yeah, send it to Calico. The Calico would love this. Yeah, absolutely, you should. I'll send him the slides if you want, the couple slides on Calico Cats. I can share them. Let's see. Does that mean that exclusively black or orange cats share some sort of pattern based on what you describe? Okay, wait, Dark, let me see. Your question is, do the black or orange cats share some sort of pattern? I guess like what's in common, right, is that their cells will produce that pigment. So it's basically like there's two flavors of the same gene, so to speak. Like it's the same place on the chromosome, but there's a version that leads to orange pigment, and there's a version that leads to the black pigment. So for cats who have that gene that are either black versus orange, if they're male cats, they have one copy of that chromosome that has either the orange or the black, and that's what leads to that color. Or if they are female cats, they're what we call homozygous, meaning that the two copies, their two X chromosomes, both have the same allele, is what it's called, or the flavor of gene. So they would have both of the black alleles or both of the orange alleles. Calico cats are when you have one allele that's black, one allele that's orange. We would call that heterozygous. And again, depending on which of those embryonic cells, which of those X chromosomes became inactivated, leads to the ones that end up being divided and then produce the other, cells that are part of the cat. So that's why you see the patches. So, KMC never did that, but you also soak up info like a sponge. You as well, Leroy. Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is an average recommendation, and I do also agree. I think it's class to class dependent. At least for me, it was class to class dependent. Some classes I felt like I didn't have to put in a shit ton of time to learn it. I had classes though. I remember when I was in like quantum mechanics and like thermodynamics, those were classes that I absolutely put in 2 to 3 hours on top of lectures because it just was conceptually more difficult for me to understand. And for me, like, I didn't like classes where I had to memorize things, but I did it. But classes where I had to learn processes or understand concepts like that, I really enjoyed. But for things that are, I don't know, less intuitive for me, so to speak, I had to put more time into it in order to feel like I actually understood it well enough. So I did pretty well. I mean, even in my graduate level quantum class that I took here at in Colorado, I mean, I aced it. I did the best in my cohort, actually, but I had to put in a bunch of time because... yeah, even though I had some prior coursework in it, some of it was just pretty fucking hard for me. So, anyway, Leroy, you said you're vibing. You've been consumed by Core Keeper. I hope it's been fun, though. Oh, it wasn't for concealed. It was counted, Yakuman. Oh, I'm sorry. So basically, yeah, because of all the other points you got from, like, having Dora, having, like, Ricci and all that other shit, it ended up being that number of points. Is that what you're saying? I think that's correct. Yeah, 13 or more Han. Oh my god, Drew, don't bring work to home. I know. Sorry, but I do. You need to practice many problems per topic students never do. I just wrote out some example questions for my students. Actually, I posted this to Canvas. It's our learning management system that we use. I posted this, some questions for them to review. And hopefully we'll see how they do with it. But these were not graded, so actually last semester I had these questions be graded. Or not these exact ones, I should say, but oh, what the hell? Sorry, give me a second. Okay, there we go. Why is this being hidden? I'm super confused. Is this showing? Oh, it is showing now. I see. Okay. Let me see. It's probably too hard to even read these, I would imagine. But yeah, I wrote a bunch of like sample questions for them where I'm not going to grade them, but if they want to ask me about it, I'll talk about them. Since our exam is a week from today. So, also, what's up, Flynn? How the heck are you doing? Y'all, I was lurking in Flynn's stream today, which was really nice. By the way, if y'all haven't been to Flynn's stream before, please go check him. Please go check him out. I've known Flynn for like a little bit, 'cause, Flynn will come here and hang out, right? But through playing a bunch of Baldur's Gate and getting more into it, I learned about Flint's endeavors streaming Baldur's Gate, and he's in Act 3 of his honor mode playthrough, and I believe this is your second attempt. But yeah, super super cool. So I was really enjoying lurking and hanging out there today. So you should definitely go check him out. Oh, also, their will love that for them. Drew might be able to not be able to answer this because that is partially explained by Black Cat's Rust. I don't know, to be honest with you. I would look it up though. I would look it up, sure. So Dark, you said interesting. So the black orange cats should have one or two of their color allele. I'm sure I butchered that, but only female cats essentially have one of each. Yes. So the male cats will only have one allele because that allele is found on the X chromosome. So if they have a Y chromosome, they can only have up to one, or well, they have exactly one of those alleles, either the black or the orange one. But for female cats, they can either be homozygous for one of those colors, so like you said, one or two, right? Either one of the black or two of the black, one of the orange, two of the orange. But only female cats can have one of each. Exactly. You got that right, Dark. Exactly. So that's why they're almost exclusively female cats. The reason why it's almost exclusively is, again, in cases where they have more than one copy of the X chromosome, but also, say, a Y chromosome. Which, you know, that exists in cats just like it does with humans, too. So. Math isn't real, says Leroy. Canvas represent. Yeah, hell yeah. You work with Canvas, too? Leroy, I don't know if you have any, like, Canvas tips and tricks, things like that, if you have any strategies you like, but I would totally hit you up on that, because I think my Canvas pages look pretty good, but they could certainly look better. Used to be really great at math, and then I just hit a roadblock with calculus, and I didn't have the time to learn it. My friend is a math teacher and explained to me that people tend to be either algebraic or calculus thinkers, so if you struggle with one, you might excel with the other. Calculus was a language of numbers and not a mathematic. I loved calculus, especially Calc 1 and 2. Translating to the third dimension started to get a little bit more difficult for me, but I loved calc. I was pretty good at it. Where I struggled with math was when we got to like abstract algebra and writing out proofs for things. That was when I started to check out and I just didn't give a shit anymore. So anyway. Appreciate that. Thanks for you. You're good people. Hope work is going well. It is going well. It's been busy, but it's been good. You're good people too, Flynn. The F1 must be homozygous for yellow too. You're correct that F1 is homo... well, okay, so sorry, it's not homozygous for yellow, but it is 100% yellow. So for that question, basically, let me do this. So for that P question that I had, which by the way, I kept telling students like P this, P that. The answer to this question is, so let's say you have a plant, right, that makes, let's make this larger. Let's say that there's a plant that makes these green peas, right, and then there's a plant that makes these yellow peas. So these are, so these would be two different pea plants. And these two pea plants are what we would call homozygous for this particular trait. So in the case of the green one, we'll just call it capital Y. So capital Y, capital Y. And then for the yellow one, sorry, actually I'm flipping this. This would be lowercase y, and this would be capital Y, capital Y. And so what I said in the question is if you take these and you cross them together, so we would call this the parental generation. That's what this P stands for. If you breed them 100% of the time, you will get yellow peas as your progeny. So the offspring, as long as these are crossed between each other and never self-pollinated, they will always be yellow. So in this particular case, the genotype for all of these will be capital Y, lowercase y. So this would be the F1 generation. And these ones are what we call heterozygous. Heterozygous. Whereas in contrast, both of these are what we would call homozygous, because they have the same allele on both chromosomes. So the Ys are just designating what the allele is on the chromosome, what flavor of it is. And because there are two. Yep, Zreika, you got it, exactly. So then what happens is the question that I asked the students is what happens if you take these and you basically breed them with each other? What happens? And you could do a Punnett square to figure it out. Punnett squares, they basically look something like this, where you're trying to figure out like what are all of the possible outcomes for this. It is. This is Mendel's experiment. This is Mendel's experiment to a T. It's the example I used, where if you cross a Y individual with a YY, the basic principle here is that you should be equally likely to get the one allele versus the other from your parent, but you only get one from each. So basically, you'll get one of these from one parent. So let's just say this is, I don't know, this parent, and we'll say that this is from, this parent. So one possible combination is you can get these alleles. You can get these alleles. You can get these alleles, which would be lowercase y, capital Y, or you can get these alleles, which would be lowercase y, lowercase y. So because the yellow color is dominant, basically whenever this allele is present, you end up with a yellow color P, which is what I said to my students, which made it sound like I was talking about urine. So this would be yellow, this would be yellow, and this would be yellow. But in this particular case, we have the two lowercase y's, so these would be green. So the answer to this question is you would get 75% yellow, and you would get 25% green. Also, what's up, Squidgy? So even though in this generation here, there's a total loss of green color, it comes back in the following generation. And there's a lot of examples of how this could occur, say like in humans, for instance, where, someone could be a carrier of a particular allele, but they might not show it. Redheads would be an example of that. Yeah, absolutely. How you could have a generation that doesn't have any redheads, and then the next one you can see that color come back again. So that is what the royal family was afraid of. So anyway, that's sort of the long story short there. What about him, says Harley. Also, good to see you, man. How you doing? I remember doing that, but with fruit flies, my nemesis. So I don't really focus on like this part of genetics. This is what we would call sort of Mendelian genetics, based on the guy back in the 1800s who did all of these experiments that started to reveal some of these things. So before even knowing like what a gene was and the fact that DNA is what carries the genetic information that, lets that is sort of like the blueprints for how cells make everything that they need. This guy back in the 1800s sort of had this idea of how genetics works based on these experiments breeding peas and other plants with each other. So dude just hung out in his garden and just bred plants all day and studied these different observable, what we call phenotypes, and then had a lot of insights about basically how, how these traits work. So, yep, so that one's pretty basic. So I only actually have one sample question that's on it. Most of the questions on this particular exam that I'm focusing on are about DNA structure and DNA function. So most of it is. So describe the forces in chemical nature that contribute to the stable structure of the B DNA helix. That B DNA helix is sort of the general form that you would usually see. So whenever you look at a picture of like a spiral-looking DNA helix, that's basically what it is B DNA. But there are other forms that exist as well. I talked about how DNA, basically you take one strand of DNA, you take another strand of DNA, you put it together, how complementary base pairing determines basically which ones go together. We talked about something called DNA supercoiling, which is pretty cool. DNA does something kind of like what your headphone cord does if you have like a wired one, or if you like start twisting it a bunch. Like let's say you hold one of it and you start twisting the other, it'll make basically these loops in the middle of it. So DNA does that too, actually, in response to torsional stress, or the stress of actually twisting it. Probably the hardest lecture that I taught were from these two questions. The answer to this question's pretty cool, but it's of number 5 here, but it's kind of hard. It's to talk about the purine salvage pathway and how its exploitation enabled generation of monoclonal antibodies. You've probably heard about antibodies before. You've probably heard about them in the context of like your immune system. So you basically have these white blood cells where... Oh, by the way, oh my god, I just realized Veprico said hello like a couple minutes ago and I totally missed it. I'm so sorry. Hello. I hope that you get some good sleep tonight, and thank you. I hope it's a good stream too. I appreciate you. I'm so sorry. I totally was rambling about genetics, and I missed that. I'm so sorry. But I hope that you're doing well, and I hope you sleep well. Anyway, welcome in, Raiders. What's going on? Me and my mini. Always a pleasure to see you. Mitochondria's powers the cell. Damn right it is. Damn right. Hello, is it Junktopus? Or maybe it's Jinktopus. Welcome in. Thanks for coming in on the raid. Hello. How y'all doing? It's nice to have you here. I was just chatting a little bit about a class that I teach, and then we're gonna play actually a Lego game today. Oh, Rise of the Octopus. Oh, Junktopus. Probably like that. Nice, Junktopus. Hell yeah, I like it. That's a cool name. But yeah, welcome in. It's nice to have you here. It's nice to have you here. End Purian exploitation. All my homies protest Purian exploitation. Yeah, it's pretty cool though, the story of how these things were initially developed. They're pretty cool. I'll see if I can explain it here in a moment concisely, but yeah. But yeah, how was your stream? I hope it was great. Let me give you a shout out really quickly and see what the heck you were up to. But I hope that you had a lot of fun today. I've heard I gotta play Disco Elysium. That game seems really good. Seems really good. Also, let me catch back up again really quickly. Zereki said, see, the Royals, or at least some of them, I guess, were quite afraid of what Megan's children would look like. They were afraid of these damn traits showing back up again. I do love playing in the garden like a little gnome. You would have gotten along well with Mr. Mendel. Not gonna lie, I envy Mendel because I just want to hang out in my garden. The fuck? The queers just want to regress into nature. Seriously. Yeah, a bunch of nature metaphors. Hell yeah. Yeah, I think it's cool though. Honestly, the stat, like the way that those experiments were done is cool. I like it. People didn't really appreciate what he did though until many years after he died, which is true for a lot of scientists. To give you an example, I've talked about Rosalind Franklin before. I think I've talked about her in the stream, but I've certainly talked about her in my lectures. And she was the graduate student who basically did the critical experiments that Watson and Crick used to create the model for how the three-dimensional structure of DNA looks. And the long story short, in case you haven't heard too much about it, is that her boss, a guy named Maurice Wilkins, basically without her consent took the work and gave it to these other guys. And she ended up getting like no credit for it as a result. Everybody talks about Watson Crick, and even to this day, a lot of people associate DNA structure with those two. And I'm not saying that those two didn't have a role in the process. They're also kind of pieces of shit. They actually suck a lot. And again, it really wasn't until actually Rosalind Franklin passed away. She passed away at a